Hello, and welcome to today's show, Growth Without Risk. My name is Dr. Janice Hughes, and I'm excited to be with you today to have a great conversation about your patients' buying decisions. I'd be remiss if I didn't, first of all, thank ChiroSecure. ChiroSecure brings you these shows, things to focus on helping you in practice. My role and background is that I was involved with the practice management group for years. I've been a personal and professional business coach. And so I'm really excited when I get this opportunity to talk with you, to talk with practitioners about things that matter to you in practice. And a big piece of that, whether we like it or not, is the fact that our patients' buying decisions about anything in their life impacts whether they buy the message, whether they buy and engage in our services. So I know that's a challenge because we hope that by being a great practitioner, that is going to speak for itself. That's actually only over time. And even when someone comes in that is a direct referral to you, you still have to sell them and show them why what you're talking about can impact them. So it's a challenge, but it's an exciting challenge. What I want you to know is that way back, even in practice, and it's been a number of years now, I haven't been in practice, that when I first learned this, I began to realize that practice wasn't so much about me, it was about them. And that frame allowed me to say, how do they hear me? So one of the things I want you to know is that what happens and the way patients make decisions is actually based on a funnel, a kind of funnel related to their personality, their learning styles. So you notice at the top of this funnel, I'm trying to sort of give you an impression of a funnel here. It's things like, are they an auditory, visual, or kinesthetic learner? But what I found that's a little more difficult to pick up. Likewise, some of the very deep belief patterns or systems at the bottom of the funnel are really different to pick up instantly on a patient. Whereas one of the other shows I did, I talked about one of the systems of personality profiling or understanding that I think is really applicable to us as practitioners, and that's called the 4 quadrants. And I like you to understand these quadrants because the patients present showing us their style. So the 4 quadrants, you may have already heard these words, or if you heard one of the previous shows I did, there's the driver, the expressive, the amiable, and then the analytical. Now, I want you to, just for a minute, recognize a lot of you will intuitively know this. You'll pick up on the clues or cues that the patient's presenting with. You can think even in terms of your staff. If you stop and think about it, each of them has a different style. So I want to go through these for a few minutes. An analytical patient, an analytical person, sees the world through data and information, statistics. They like more organization. So the way that a patient presents and how they fill out, some of you may still like paperwork versus electronic. Paperwork actually really gives you a lot of cues because an analytical, if you ask them things like, have they ever been in a motor vehicle accident or some type of an accident? If you're having them fill out on paper, they'll actually take more space. Like in a margin, they'll not only tell you that they were in an accident, but that accident happened when they were driving 45 miles an hour. They were hit on the front right-hand corner of the car. They felt this. They know that their head did this. They'll describe that to you. Electronic paperwork, it may be more difficult. A lot of the paperwork actually has, spot where they can fill out other instead of just saying yes in an accident. If that is clicked, it opens up a little box where they can actually fill a little bit out. So what I want you to see is that an analytical, if you're asking them a question, they're going to give you more information. They're going to give you that detail. If you're asking about any previous medications, they'll tend to know the meds they were on and often even the dosage. So they'll be very detailed in some of the information that they share with you, they give to you, or they share with you. They actually prefer to present it in a written format. They're not often really open in the way they communicate. Now, let's talk a little bit about the driver. A driver tends to be the style of patient that presents very quickly into the clinic. If they come into the clinic, they walk right up to the front desk. They introduce themselves. They're very forthright in how they even come into the clinic. It's interesting with the driver personality, a lot of times there's very little filled out on any paperwork. It's always, here's exactly what I'm here for. And they'll leave things out. Sometimes it takes a driver, a couple of weeks of care to then reinforce, oh, yes, actually I was in a car accident, or this is what has happened to me in the past. So what I want you to know, if you think about, you'll notice that I've set this slide up with grades or arrows, that kind of try to show that there's a gradient here. And the two I've spoken about first are the two that are above the midline. And both of those personalities are more bottom line. They're bottom line production or results for the driver. Their bottom line details or measurements. Like if you ask an analytical patient on a scale of 0 to 10, they'll have a very specific answer and reasoning behind that pain scale or their progress scale. They like filling those things out. Now let's convert to the two on the bottom or below the horizon, below that midline. And what I want you to know about those two personalities is, again, they're much more people-oriented. So the amiable, let's talk about the amiable. And I say that because the amiable actually represents, on average, 40% of the population, much more than any of the other styles. The interesting thing is the amiable is often just those very nice people. Now, they present to the clinic where often they're not going to walk right in. They may come in the front door as a new client, look around, want to see the surroundings. They respond incredibly well to an office tour. They like and feel more confident knowing the space, knowing the people in the space. Now, an amiable is often someone that you need to pull things out of a little more, not talk at. They will respond more if you're sitting eye to eye, knee to knee, not standing over, trying to ask them for more information and details. They're not going to tend to know the data or information like off the top of their head the way an analytical does. They may come in with a piece of paper that actually lists out any medication they're on, so that they want to share that, but they know that they're not going to be able to have that right at their recall. Now, the expressives, again, another very people-oriented personality. They're obviously, we always think about more outgoing, expressive in their communication. They'll want to talk about things versus put them on paper. So it's interesting, they're often the kinds of patients that if you're not careful, once they're in the clinic or a regular patient, that you get caught or almost trapped in a room with them. Now, the way I've shown the gradient, the scale, is because depending on, and I'll show you later, like a way that you can even test this yourself or do it with your staff. You would never give a patient a personality test, but picking up on clues because there's a grade. So if I talk about that midline again, so the two above, they are more bottom line production oriented. They're actually, as you go up closer to the top, they're more closed about really expressing anything about themselves or thinking that they need to have a relationship or a conversation with you. Whereas now, as you go all the way down that scale into the bottom, which are more people oriented, the further and further down, on the scale, people are much more open and really want to share. And in fact, those are the people that it's really important you learn how to channel that, because those kinds of things can get you off on all these tangents and miss that a patient's buying decisions still have to connect with them. So we'll talk about a couple of tools or ways to do that. Now, the other scale along the horizon goes all the way from indirect. So when they're more over on that side of the scale, they are not going to talk about or share things. It's almost like you're going to have to pull things out of them. Now, as you move all the way across the scale, that's where people are much more direct. They're willing to say things. We know some patients that will say anything, or ourselves, we can think about our personality. Some people, even if something's really tough, they're still willing to talk about it. So there's definitely these scales or these grades within these different profiles. Now, like I said, there is an assessment tool where you yourself as a chiropractor would benefit from knowing your own score, or with your team, you can think in terms of that. But the reason you would do that and take the testing is so you understand yourself and your style, but how you then modulate, or I'm going to call it almost manage what you're saying so that the other people, so that the patients better understand you. So this slide, actually, this is through ChiroSecure. If you want access to this quiz, to this testing, it's a self-assessment, then by all means, please just text this word, test, to the number here on your screen. We want to provide you with this information, and I'm really happy to have the conversations with you about it. But what I want to spend the next few minutes talking about is how we pick up these clues with our existing patients, and then why it's important and how we language things to them. So a person's buying decision is based on these learning styles. Now, there's some really great groups and programs that teach different sales techniques. And like I said, whether we like it or not in healthcare, and particularly in the current healthcare environment, it's really important that we clearly language who we are, what we do, and allow the right ways to help a patient make a purchasing, a buying decision about the kind of care that you offer. I know how powerful it is. I know how important it is. We have to help them understand that. So thinking in terms of seeing some of these clues, your staff and team can be very involved. How does someone even show up to the clinic? Do they march right in? Do they stick their hand out to shake your hand? Those things are showing that, again, they are much more open and very quickly want to engage. Some of those people that are really open will be drivers. Some of them will be expressives. How you start to pick that next part up is how they fill out their paperwork. If you've seen that in advance, if you do electronic and you already have it in advance, that really helps give you some clues already. But often even like how someone asks questions about the clinic. The expressives will tend to want to engage your team more. They'll be looking to see who else is in the clinic, or if you have testimonials up, they'll be looking at those, reading those. Drivers are much more about, again, they're very open, but what's in this for me? How will this change things for me? And so you want to, with some of your language and conversations, really make sure you recognize those filters. The expressives, these more open people that are expressives, they are the kind of patients that can understand quality of life, vitality, your nervous system. How you live your life is through your nervous system. Everything you taste, touch, smell, think, and do is connected to that. Who's checked your nervous system? And then we want to get quiet. So they kind of have that, couple of seconds, 30 seconds of conversation. Now, with the drivers, again, we still want to be addressing things like, their x-rays, showing, and if you're doing anything that's related to x-ray or tests, where are they? And, how do they change it? So if you're, like, for example, with your HRV, if you're using the Insight Millennial, scoring and testing, here's where you are, here's healthy. What do you see as important here? So having where we pull these things out, we allow them to talk about it. But a driver, it's definitely about that bottom line, results. Here's what we put together for the plan and the results that you're going to generate. Now, remember, the other two styles on the opposite side of this testing are much more, I'll just call it, they're less open, less emotive. They're definitely the two styles that we need to pull a little bit more out of. Well, their buying decisions, again, are made up of different things. And amiable is the kind of patient that you can really talk about and anchor the things that matter the most to them. If their pain is stopping them from getting down on the floor and playing with their grandchildren, that's something that really matters to them. And talking to them, you notice I change even the modulation of my voice. I'm a little less direct, less specific. I'm a little softer. I want to talk about the things that matter to them, how the care that I'm promoting, the care that I'm sharing here is going to be in their best interest, and how that's allowing them to begin to again do all those things that matter to them. Now, the analyticals are again on that same side where they're definitely not as, open, expressive, and they are going to make their buying decisions more internally. But this is the group that they'll need measurements or metrics, linking why the recommended care plan. What kinds of things will we retest and measure and monitor? And you notice a couple of those key words that are more in the vocabulary of an analytical, so that you're already showing them, this is the group that the challenge is, oh, well, we'll just take it week to week. We think, oh, well, then we're not overwhelming someone with the care plan. And if anything, they just don't think you have a plan then. So this is the group that really understands, here's the proposed care. Here's what our objectives are. Here's what we will monitor. So I'm just giving you a few little clues. You notice in some of the language, we can then begin to use this not only with basically like allowing them to make that right buying choice, giving them the words, the clues, the way we communicate, so that it allows them to feel really comfortable and confident with the choices they're making. The more we help and share this kinds of information with our team can then even really address how they multiple schedule someone. How I like for all styles to still multiple schedule for that whole first phase of the care plan, or real clarity on that. But you'll notice that you can communicate that into each person's style, so it allows them to continue to make this buying decision. Now, don't also be under any illusion that you only have to learn to sell that in the very beginning. If anything, I think through the pandemic, through all of these fears related to the way the media ramps up this health issue, it's all along the way of your care, people are revisiting their choices. You want to continually engage them, allow them to really hear you. So that's the real clue with this, is that a person's buying decisions are based on them. Now, like I said, there are fabulous groups and tools and ideas about how to better understand the buying process. In fact, I'm hopeful that I can bring an interview on one of my next shows, a couple of those people that share, that have really sort of dug into this or delve more deeply into this, because they know that someone choosing your care is often less about your skill set or less about the sort of results, the way that's tracking, and more about how you're sharing that with them. So again, we've just talked about these ways that you can think in terms of the patient and help them make that buying and purchasing decision, which I think is so ultimately important. Because for me, as a chiropractor, I think they all need to be under your care. I get great acupuncturists, so I just want to help you in any way I can. So again, on your screen is where and how you can get that quick personal self-assessment. If you have it, if you have your own score, if there's anything you want as far as some input, feedback, ideas, I'm just happy to, again, help provide you with some great resources, or even hop on a phone call and have a conversation with you about it. Now, again, I want to thank ChiroSecure for allowing me to have these conversations, to bring to you, this show. Next week, Growth Without Risk will be hosted by Dr. Sherry McAllister. So thank you to everyone. Please know that my intention is to help you, to help as many doctors, just like ChiroSecure, by bringing you all of these hosts. So thanks again, and have a wonderful day.